Everybody, thank you so much for joining the Howie and Beast Mode podcast. I'm Howie and I'm joined by Beast Mode. How are you doing?
I'm great, Howie. It's just a wonderful Tuesday. I'm excited for tonight, especially our topic in the power of saying no.
The power of saying no. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you
Well,
got to cut right to it.
that sounds like a pretty good, pretty powerful topic for sure. So I think, we have obviously spent some time preparing this for the folks out there. And, I think it's something that we're both pretty passionate about, which is, the ability to focus. And so I think the first area we talked about sharing a little bit on is that to grow in your business or to grow in life, it is important to do something. So right now we're talking about saying no, but we wanted to start off by just saying, you know what, analysis paralysis is a bad thing, and you do have to take action. It is important to do something. So beast mode, I mean, that's a pretty simple start, but to grow, we're all going to have to, move forward with some action.
Yeah, and I'll give you a real quick analogy on the power of no. And this is one that I learned a long time ago. It's actually from Chris Boss, and he talks about the power of saying no. And this is so simple. Whenever you're talking to a customer, so say you're getting somebody on the line. Most people are trained to say you want them to say yes. There's power in yes. Well, there's actually more power in no. And the quick example is when you call somebody and say, "Is now an okay time?" A lot of times they have to think about it. They want to know, if it's an unplanned call or maybe it is a planned call. They have to think about it. And so they're wondering, do I say yes? Do I not say yes? And so a lot of times you'll get a yes and they don't really mean it, right? But if you call them and say, is now a bad time? You're giving them the ability to say no immediately, right off the bat, and they're just fine with it. They'll tell you no. And then what? On the other end, it frees you up to say, when would be a better time to call back? So it's just one of those ways to free up and to say no, because no is very empowering. Now, what we're talking about is no to overscheduling or no to something that we need to take off our plate. Is really what we're going to power into. But we got to start off and let everybody know there is a lot of power in saying no.
That's for sure. Yeah, when you think about the exhausted, I heard about the ER doctor who committed suicide today. It's just such a tragic story, how she was making a difference on the front lines of fighting this virus and was just totally exhausted and felt responsible to go right back to work after not enough rest and everything. And obviously that leads to psychological things. And so, she's a hero. She died a hero. We love her. We're proud of her. But it's such a terrible loss as well. And what we want to make sure is we're not living in a state of exhaustion. And so by saying no to things, you can live in a more rested, prepared state. Obviously, if you're an emergency room doctor fighting COVID in New York, you don't probably have that ability, but most people do have the ability to say no. And that way they can live in a more rested, prepared state. But it is important to do something. So we talked about how basic planning is really good, and you had a really interesting quote you shared with me earlier today. What was that quote?
Yes. So it's a vision without action is a daydream, and action without a vision is a nightmare. So it
Hmm.
lets us know that action is necessary. So we can't just get in a planning phase and get stuck there because then we're in a daydream. But then we can't just get an idea and just rush out the front door and start doing it. Although there's a lot of fairy tale stories that start like that, there is some type of planning to where you put some purpose, some directive, some motives behind it, and you had a clear heading. Otherwise, you're out there, hammering in a screw, and that's just not efficient.
Yep, it's good. Some of the active moving forward. I heard this from Jordan B. Peterson. He says that we're all kind of sometimes paralyzed because the timing isn't right or the finances aren't right or we're not sure if we're good enough or smart enough or we're believing something someone said to us 15 years ago or whatever it may be, but it's paralyzing us from taking action. And what Jordan B. Peterson said on this particular podcast was, what do you know? You know what I mean? I mean, you don't know what your most skilled area is. You don't know what the future holds or what the exactly perfect opportunity or timing is. So get started and learn from that experience so that you can at least be, you know, forward motion and you can learn from that. And I think that's really, really good. My daughter right now, during this viral time of being locked in, her college was canceled. She's home from college and she has started a business where she's actually selling tie-dye, custom tie-dye shirts and tops of different kinds on social media, and has sold like over 105 pieces now at this point through social media. So she's learning by doing, and even though she's made some mistakes, and she has made some, she's made a lot of money and she's learned a lot of lessons. And I would say she's getting a couple of college classes right now on social media, on selling, on finance, on customer service, on shipping, all kinds of things that are probably on textile manufacturing. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
even on warehousing and all kinds of stuff. And so, if she would have sat around and said, "Well, I don't know how to. I'm not a fashion person." I mean, she wouldn't have the brand and the quality and the repeat orders that she's getting now from that. So I think getting started is a really big thing because the process will teach you, and that's part of what will make you successful. Any uh any thoughts or comments on that?
You're going with your daughter. So one of the things that I'm sure she did is she didn't just start throwing paint on shirts and just buying, 1,000 shirts. She did some type of planning to say, maybe I should buy 10 shirts. And you know what? Maybe this platform is the best platform. Let me try this one. And you know what? Let me try this one as well. So there's a little bit in that I got to get going, but there's not enough planning that's going to sit here to there shouldn't be a mountain of planning that you have to overcome just to get started. There
Hmm.
should just be a getting started form. Now, we did talk about, because sometimes we can be in a planning, but, I do want to do this and there's some investment that I want to put into it. And there is a little bit of a hurdle, but then we still get stuck there. And I know one of the things that I've come to choose is that I need to make a decision. And so after I've done a little bit of planning and I've made themselves a self-assessment, if I'm not moving forward, then I will manually shift it off my plate. But then if I cannot just throw it away, you know what I'm saying? If I literally can't throw it in the trash bin, then I tell myself, I put a timetable. I need to do this. You've got 24 hours, Jordan, to make the next step, or else it's going in the trash. And I try to hold myself accountable. Tell somebody that, hey, I got 24 hours to get this thing going, this next step, or I want you have the free reign to throw it in the trash for me. You know, it just makes me move. You know.
Good. Personal deadlines. Like, I'm gonna physically kill this off if if I can't get it going by a certain amount of time.
Yeah, and most of the time it's circumstances. Circumstances make us move. When somebody says, you know, we'll just we'll use an example. A guy who doesn't want to change, and then all of a sudden his wife wants to leave. Now he wants to change really, really bad because the circumstance changed. So a lot of times we're waiting for those circumstances to come up and make us make a decision, but a lot of times it's too late. If we use that plate analogy, whatever's on that plate is done rotten by the time that circumstance comes around, and then you're trying to enact something that's way past its deadline.
Yeah,
So we need to be proactive, and just like you said, we're going to figure this out.
absolutely. I recently did a startup business as a side hustle, kind of evening weekend thing. That was a lot of fun, and I had an idea based on a specific market need, and I spent a little bit of time on it, and I purposely gave myself, I actually took a little bit of time off to work on it, but it was an experiment for me, and I've already killed it off, and it was like, I don't know, maybe a 14-day, maybe even a 13-day experiment. But it was like full social media, website, domain, email, everything was set up, and I was pursuing that. And I even I had 7,000 impressions, and I think maybe over 150 clicks maybe on from Facebook onto my website, and all kinds of stuff that was set up. But for not a lot of money, I was able to learn through that process, and I had a lot of fun. I love business, and so for me, it was just something that I kind of wanted to do And I kind of was not real sensitive about it, whether or not it worked. I just put it out there. What Gary Vee says is put it out there and let the market will talk to you. So I wasn't paralyzed by over planning, but I did some planning. But I also, there was that balance, which Beast Mode was saying, which is, I had a vision and I did some planning, but also I didn't wait around, forever either. But then also, just like Beast Mode said a second ago, where he has a personal rule, he kills things off very, very quickly. I killed this off in maybe 2 weeks or something like that. And so, yeah, it's very similar idea. But I also was able to get a major learning lesson from that. And it's brought me some sharpening and some clarity to kind of what I want to do, kind of what I don't want to do for hobbies or side hustle or whatever it may be through that process. So yeah, I'm resonating with what you're saying a lot, and I literally just lived it. And I do agree that with my daughter's business, that she didn't overplan, but she did some planning. In fact, I would say she had more discipline in her purchasing. Like you said, she didn't buy 1,000 shirts. She probably did buy like 10. Honestly, she was buying them like white shirts from Walmart for $5 or less. Some of her shirts were $2. So she was sourcing them very smartly and she was buying them very judiciously. I was encouraging her to buy more, and she actually stayed within a little bit more of a conservative buy. So, yeah, she did a pretty good job of planning. I actually
Whatever it is
feel so.
that avenue that I'm going down, whether it's positive or negative, whatever the outcome doesn't define me, and so I'm comfortable to walk down that path.
Yeah, it's really weird though. I create a lot of promo videos. I mean, for only, if we're taking 2 days off of work and then working on the weekend to get this thing going, it's surprising how much actual content I put out and quality. And, I even had, logo attire that I was wearing in videos and the whole bit. So it actually is surprising how I did get a little bit emotionally tied to it, not emotional sad, but kind of like I had some buy-in to it and it's some belief, and
Sure.
it actually was hard to kill it a little bit. And it's a muscle. It's probably another lesson. I will probably have years of lessons from this little 2 week experiment, because I did spend like all-nighters, like a lot of seriously serious hours on this. But it was really, I want to just confess, it was pretty hard to kill. And I felt it a little bit. You know what I mean? Can you understand when I say I
Yeah.
felt it a little bit when I killed it?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
But it
but
doesn't define who you are,
it doesn't
right?
define who I am. And I know that the discipline of start fast, kill fast is really important. I know that in my mind. So I'm having to kind of like, my mind's having to tell my heart, this was always an experiment. This was always kind of having fun and kind of learning and seeing if the market would speak. And it didn't. And so you said, this was an experiment. This is education. And let's see what the market says. If don't get all emotional now. And and the reason why I'm kind of like I was able to make myself move fast, even though I'm a loyal person. That's kind of why I stick to things. But back in 2010, I launched a website that I had spent 3 years on, and I stayed with it for 2 or more years after it failed. I stayed with it to the tune of over $125,000. Actually, don't know what I really spent, but it was north of that for sure that I can track. And in 5 years of my life, now I learned an incredible amount from that, which is why I can do now a 13-day startup and kill it off for $200, which is what I spent about that. When it doesn't work, instead of like just dragging myself through 5 years, you know what I'm saying? So I can experiment with like 7 businesses or 40 businesses in 5 years,
Yeah.
and sort of like test the market on some different things if I want to, or just stay with my primary job. And I'm doing plenty of things to innovate within those
Mhm.
parameters as well. But I'm kind of the person who likes to have a hobby and likes to do something, which is why I was kind of working on that. But yeah, so you're right. It doesn't define me, but it was hard work to close it down, like emotional hard work.
I don't want to stay on this side of the topic because there is the total other
I know
side
we
where
have a whole thing. Yeah,
where there's so much on our plate
there we go.
that we need to say no.
Yeah,
That we're not there. It's the whole jack of all trades where I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm not great at anything. That's not a compliment, you know. If I'm doing a lot of things, if I'm doing 10 things at a 1%, you know, that's not doing very well. I got to learn to say no and be able to evaluate. And some of that comes back to priorities and saying, where should I split my time first? Where can I find, sometimes it's kind of a Dave Ramsey thing. Where can I get the quickest no? Where can I find out if this is going to work? That way I can get it off the plate.
I hadn't heard that from him. That's good.
Well, he talks about it from a money standpoint. I switched it to a business. He talks about, alleviating your debt. And so you got to start with one, alleviate one. But it's the same thing. If I got five startups I'm going down and I can't spend time wisely on all five, I need to find out which one of these is either going to ride or die real quick. And then maybe I have four. Then I do the same thing to see if I have three. But,
Good. Yeah. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I tend to have some ideas. I think a lot of people do. And so, I think keeping a list of what your ideas are is good for clarity. But, saying no to those means that, by saying no to almost everything, and this is actually from Jordan B. Peterson as well, but if I say no to almost everything, then I can have time for a very few things to really focus on.
mm,
And especially for people who have a family, you want to make sure that they're getting some of your time because they need you. And so you have to factor that time in. You've got especially if most of our listeners probably have a job. I know it's tough for some out there who don't. But when you have a job, you owe them that 40, and you really, most people would say you really should push it even more. I definitely give my job more than 40. Plus whatever I was doing on this side hustle, I was still giving them probably 46, 47 hours a week, I would say, maybe more in my primary job. So you have to be very responsible and diligent with that. But if you have things that you want to pursue, I mean, for example, if you're going to work out, you're going to have to say no to Netflix. And so you have to say no to a lot of things.
right.
And I think this podcast is going to really help people beast mode in thinking of do something, don't wait forever, but also be aware that no muscle is really important. In fact, in our prep conversation, you said that, and you may have covered already on this as well, how no is actually can be more powerful than even yes. Why don't you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no is more powerful than a yes in so many different ways, because yes is a lot of times is superficial. So we can say yes and say yes half-heartedly and
Mm,
not be all in. And so that's I mean that goes to like a sales tactic and things like that, where they say, do you like strawberries? Do you do you like this? And they're just trying to get you to say yes until they finally ask you, do you want $1 million? And of course I do, but I'm just half-heartedly agreeing with you, mainly because I'm just trying to get to the point. What are
yeah.
you trying to do? Whereas if you ask me a no question, I would tell you no, no thank you, and but a lot of times we think that that's abrupt or it's rude, and it's not. What it is it tells you exactly where I am, and then at least it opens up the conversation. Some of this is just an internal conversation though that we're having. Do I want to watch Netflix, or do I want to get better at what I'm doing? Do I want to go down this avenue? And if you're playing those roles, then you can't say yes to both, so you got to say no to one, right? And those are just a priority that we make. And so when you allow yourself to say no, I am not going to do that, it actually empowers you to whatever your yes was. It furthers that decision, right? It goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We're forcing myself to make a decision. It actually empowers whatever decision I made, right or wrong. It empowered it to do whatever I'm doing. So sometimes it's just that add a little bit of confidence, you know, because that. And so even if no's the wrong answer, if you tell something no and it's the wrong answer, whenever you come back, your yes is stronger. You know what I'm saying? So,
Hmm.
for example, if I had a startup and I had a kill off date of, tomorrow, and then, I just said, yeah, nope, right, and then I walked away for half a day or a week or whatever, but then I decided, now it's building, now it's building. When I come back, my yes is now even more strong. I've got more confidence. I got more passion. It made me make a decision. That makes sense?
Hmm. Yep. Yep. I think it's good. So I think, in terms of evaluating, let's talk about how do we evaluate what to say no to?
For me, That's a real quick answer, and I've talked about it on probably 4 or 5 different podcasts, and it's a purpose. And for me, and I'm not going to spend very long on it, but the purpose is my filter. It's my no. So if it doesn't go through that filter, then it's an automatic no, and it's really simple. It's really easy. And even if it's a great thing, if somebody invited me and said, "Hey, do you want to go save children's lives in Africa?" Yeah, I really do, but it doesn't fit through my purpose. And so maybe I'll fund somebody else to go, or maybe I'll pray for somebody else to go, or I'll help you find somebody else. But it's not for me, even though it's a great thing. I would love to go, but it doesn't fit through my purpose. And
Hmm,
so that's a great way, and it's an easy way to say no.
it's good. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think also evaluating your rest. And are you able to, I know people believe in working hard. I believe in working hard. I already expressed that a minute ago. That I tend to, I literally like to work as a hobby. I literally love to work. But I think also, looking at your time and what's available to you and how you're treating your body and how you're treating your family is also, a good factor to think about in terms of saying no. I am pinged by people all the time who want me to do this or read that or do this or follow up on that or whatever. And I have had to, and I tend to be an agreeable kind of person. So I tend to be sort of like, I like to say yes. But in the recent past, I've learned to say no. And it's just because I've had to evaluate what's possible because I can't have my physical health breakdown, or I can't have my family relationships breakdown, or spiritual relationships breakdown either. And so I've had to learn. That's another factor. So I think purpose is a great factor, and I also think your personal aspects of your time uh, also have to be protected. And frankly, you're gonna, whatever you do, invest time in, you want to do well to give yourself the chance of that being successful, even if it's just working out, which is a great one. um, so you want to make sure you have time to put into that. So that's a few thoughts I think on getting started and not judging yourself too much, as well as the power of saying no. Conversation, a few reasons why we don't start, and why maybe we're saying no for invalid reasons.
Yeah.
So what are some of the invalid no's that you tend to run into?
Fear is probably the biggest one, and fear can be identified as a lot of different things. Um, you can be, for me, vulnerability can be one. Again, it's that confidence that maybe if I go down this path and it doesn't work, does it define me? Does it tell me that I'm a failure? It's part of that being vulnerable, and some of it is if you don't know the answer to that, if you don't know that, if it's positive, if this avenue is successful, or if it's negative. If you don't know the answer to that, then you're gonna have to walk down the path anyways. You can't sit there because then you'll never know the answer. Part of it is security. I feel secure where I am. I'm comfortable where I am, and this avenue doesn't move me. Now, if I'm in that circumstance where I'm secure where I am, and the choices in front of me don't move me, I probably should say no to them. If they don't move me to get out of my security, then it's probably not something that I need to be investing my time in, taking time away from something else. And so a lot of times that's a decision maker for me. Um, and then I know you wrote all of them down. I rattled off of them real quick. So
Yeah, no, I'll give you two more and then we'll wrap up. But
yeah,
the second to last one is money.
yeah,
Sometimes we don't start because of money. But guys, I just told you how I started a business that got 7,000 impressions on Facebook and over 150 likes and responses. And over, by the way, I think the website had, I don't want to be exaggerated, but well over 300 visits. And I did get a lead actually for this business. I did get a lead from that as well. But I did all that under $200. So I don't think money. I think if you think it's money, you should hit up Beast Mode and myself for a call, and we'll talk to you about the money aspect of it because it may be that you're thinking too big and you should
yeah,
start small. Start small and see if the mark. See what it's like. Gary Vee says, see what the market says versus you
mhm.
building it all out. You want to know how I spent $125,000 in 3 years and wasted 5 years of my life, and it's not wasting to learn. So I know, I know, I know. But you still, if you want to spend, I could have done it for 10K
Yeah,
and just tested it. Got it? That's what I
Yeah.
mean by waste. And then the last point is just the internal beliefs.
Yeah.
And the internal beliefs can come because someone told you you're not good enough, or
Yeah.
someone told you you're not smart enough, or you're telling yourself that, or we don't know why we have voices. There's a factor in psychology called automatic negative thoughts, and or ants, and spiritual people have a different way of talking about those. You know, the Christian community has a different way of talking about those. But there's a lot of negative thoughts that you need to be thinking about that are the false no's. So make sure you're saying no strategically and not saying no because of false no's like fear and patience and vulnerability and security and money and you know, improper self internal conversations, that improper belief system. So with that, I think we're out of time, but I certainly enjoyed chatting with you, Beast Mode, and glad everybody was able to tune in.
Of course, Howie. And we just want to thank everybody for checking us out. Again, we're on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and again, we're posting on all the different social media. So give us a like, a share, some feedback, and we'll get back in touch with you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right.